Hello, my name is Michelle and this is my channel, Amicia.Official. Today I'm going to be chatting with you about my first 3 makes for my Make 9 2025. I'm so excited to share with you the finished products, how it went, what I thought about them. So come along for the ride and let's get started. So these are the 3 makes that I did for the first 3 projects of my Make 9 2025. We're going to go through each of them one by one. So let's start with the first one that I did. I did this pattern by McCall's. M8480 and I did View C. So cute. I love how it came out. I've been wanting to make this one since last fall, so I put it first on my list for this year for my Make 9 2025. I had the fabric and everything. I knew exactly what I wanted to do, so that was definitely a fun project for me. And I do have my notes. So this year I started keeping a sewing book of all of my projects. So I pulled it out of my sewing book. I write down what the sewing pattern was, the date that I made it, the view and the size that I cut, any supplies that I used, and the cost. I don't sew in order to save money on clothing necessarily, but it's a fun side benefit. And then I also just like to see how much it ends up costing me. And then I include any fabric samples there, how difficult it was. I rate from 1 to 5. And then I also mark whether or not I would make it again. And then in the bottom, I have the modifications that I made, what went well, what was difficult, and then notes for me for next time. I always look back at these if I want to make the pattern again, to kind of just see, all right, this is what I did, this is what I suggest for myself to do next time, that kind of thing. It's just really helpful and handy, especially if you tend to reuse patterns over and over, which we should. We pay for them. Use them as many times as you can. It's very handy, I found so far. So yeah, I pulled out all my project sheets for each of my projects. That also kind of refreshes my memory, so when I chat about them, since this one I made in February, the beginning of February, so it's been, 3 months, I've kind of forgotten what I liked about the project, but how it went, all those kind of notes. So I have them here. So this is the project, and I will include pictures. I took some pictures from my Instagram when I sewed them up, so I'll try to post those throughout the video too, so you can see the full length, since you can't really see that me holding it up. But this is the beautiful skirt that I made out of this faux pink suede, and then I just used like a poly cotton for the pockets. I don't know why, I'm just really weird and I don't like the pockets to feel like the same fabric, so I usually use like a broadcloth or a soft cotton or something just for the pockets. But anyway, for the skirt itself, it is a faux pink suede that I got from a local fabric store. Because it's faux suede, it does have a little bit of stretch along the vertical, which I was a little bit worried about for it stretching out, but there's so much top stitching involved in this that I feel like it'll really hold its shape fairly well over time. I'm also careful about how I store it, so far so good. But yes, it's an absolute beautiful skirt. It's got a lot of panels that give it all of this volume and swirly swooshiness. So it's got a ton of top stitching. It has a back yoke here. You can see on the back, it's got this little V-shaped yoke, and then it's got top stitching down the side, over pretty much every panel is top stitched. And then I did leave off the back pockets and the belt carriers because I wanted to have a more sort of streamlined, elegant, sophisticated look. It can be worn casual or formal, but I did want it to be, maybe not formal, but casual or like a little dressy. And I thought taking off the pockets and the belt carriers would make it easier to dress it up a little bit, which I think it did. I also never wear a belt, so I always find belt carriers just kind of pointless for me personally. But you do you. Anyway, I love this skirt. The only, I don't want to say mistake, I guess it's a mistake, error that I made, learning experience that I had, is that I used a light pink thread in my serger and it ends up against this darker pink. It does end up looking practically white. And because it's a high-low, you can see the back of it a little bit when I'm wearing it. I don't think anybody else cares, but in retrospect, I would have gone out and purchased a more similar matching serger thread. I think it would have elevated it a little bit more, but it's not the end of the world. I still love it. I still wear it. It still looks super cute. And then it just has the front. It's just like a normal fly zip. And then I used a jeans button. I think it calls for a regular button. I just did like one of those fake style jeans buttons. I like the look of it. It's super cute. Very Levi's or something like that, inspired. This is definitely a skirt that I would make again, and I would try even the other styles, the non-high-low. I think the high-low is very in your face, like it's very different, it's very out, like not out there, but it's very noticeable. So, you know, you could make obviously view A or view B that are just the straight across, the even hem, and it would look like a whole different style of skirt, but you'd still get a little bit of the swooshing factor. Although I think I get the most swoosh with the high-low because the back is very like swingy when you're wearing it, which is super fun. I do love it. I love to swoosh around when I feel like just playing it up a little bit, and I would definitely make it again. For me personally, as a newer sewist, like I only really started sewing my own clothes less than a year ago, so I would consider it like a 3 on the difficulty scale. Now having a few more months experience, like I said, I made this in February, I'm now in May, maybe a 2. It wasn't that hard. The fly zip is probably the most complicated part, and if you find a really good walkthrough, I know there's some great ones on YouTube already. Simplicity, their YouTube channel, they have a bunch of sew along videos. You can find a walk along that'll walk you through that, which is what I did, and it made it really easy to insert. It looks great, it fits perfect, there's no like weird gapping or pulling or anything. It looks great. It took me about 3 yards. I made a size 14, so it was somewhere around 3 yards of the pink suede, and then the all-purpose zipper and the jeans button altogether cost me about $42. So obviously your mileage will vary. I'm very happy with it. $42 for an absolutely beautiful skirt that I got a ton of compliments on. I'm very happy. So for my second project of my Make 9 2025, I did this KnowMe pattern by Donnie Q. It is KnowMe 2097. It is a men's jacket with attached scarf. This is really fun to do. I've never done a jacket. I've never done a unisex pattern either. It didn't seem that much different, except for the sizing is based off your chest size. And actually the sleeves were long enough for me, so I appreciated that. That is like the one thing that I do struggle with sometimes with women's patterns, is that they're usually drafted for someone slightly shorter than me, so the sleeves always end up, I usually have to add an inch or 2 of length to them, and this one was like perfect. So if you are shorter, if you are like more petite, then definitely double check the sleeve size before you start sewing it up. So this was a super fun project. I really enjoyed it, and there is a really great sew along tutorial if you just scan the QR code there. I think all of the KnowMe patterns, or the majority of them, have a sew along. So I did make a number of modifications. I'll show you the jacket first. Isn't she adorable? Oh my god, I love this jacket. It is so cute. You can kind of see patch pockets on the front, and then the inside I finished with bias tape seams, and then the outside I did the hot pink bias tape. But like I said, I did make a number of modifications. So this pattern is designed to be a lined jacket, but when I picked out my material, I have a double-sided quilting material. It's pre-quilted. I brought pre-quilted from Durant's. So one side is this, and then the other side is this, so they're like similar but slightly different, and I just loved both sides so much. In fact, it took me a minute to decide which side I wanted to be like the outside of the jacket and which to be the inside. So I decided against lining it, which turns out fine for me. It's very warm. I was like initially like, oh, I wonder if it'll be warm enough. It's extremely warm because in between the two is like a little bit of batting. So this coat is plenty warm for Michigan for like the fall, early winter, early spring. And I love the attached scarf because it gets really windy here, so like I always forget to pack a scarf with me when I go someplace, and I can just throw it over, and it looks super cute with the scarf over or just laying flat. I'll post some pictures so you can see how cute it looks. I really love this. So one of the modifications I made was not to line it, which was fine. I just wrapped the bias tape around the edges and finished it that way. The other modification that I made was that the bottom back swooped down just a little bit, and I have quite a bit of junk in the trunk, so that swooping thing was like really catching on my bum. So I kind of just leveled it off more before I finished it. For the back hem, I just kind of like pulled it up, cut off a tiny amount just to make it a little bit more even across the back instead of having that little dip. If you don't have big hips, then I'm sure you would be fine. But I do, and it kept getting like caught on my hips there. And then that's kind of, I think, the only modifications I made. Yes, and then because I skipped the lining, I just finished all my inside seams with a bias tape just so they look really cute and clean and finished. And for the inside seams, I did go with like this lighter pink bias tape. The outside, I really wanted it to like pop, so I did the hot pink. And then for the inside, where I didn't really want it to be noticeable, I did the lighter pink that I feel like matches the coloring a bit better. So it kind of just fades out of the way. You can tell. It's beyond cute. I get so many compliments on it. I absolutely adore it. I ended up sewing a size 38. I probably could have sized down to a 36. And then I used about 2.5 yards of the double-sided quilted cotton. I didn't write down the cost, but like kind of vaguely remembering was probably about $50 or so when I got it from Joann's, like for 2.5 yards. And then I ended up using 6 packages of bias tape because I finished the inside seams as well. Plus for 4 if you end up lining the jacket, and because I did the bias bound seams, I ended up using 6 packages of bias tape. Altogether, probably about $60 was the cost. For the third project of my Make 9 2025, I did this Vogue dress pattern, Vogue 2064, and I did View A, which is the long sleeve, shorter length dress here. These are long and they do have thumb holes on them, which sold me. I absolutely love a good thumb hole. So fun. I love sleeves with thumb holes in them. I know it's controversial because some people don't like them, but I love having thumb holes. This is the dress here. It is a deep teal jersey knit that I got from Joann's a couple months ago. It does have a turtleneck, ruche turtleneck style here. And then, like I said, the long sleeves with little thumb holes through the sleeve. Love that. And then it has a ton of panels. I think it's like 6 panels for the front and 6 panels for the back, if I remember correctly. So like 12 panels, and then you got 2 sleeves and the collar. So then I just serged all of the insides and then sewed them down, top stitched everything. So it has a very beautiful top stitched look to it. The 2 middle panels go from your shoulders all the way down, and then there's 2 on the front bodice that kind of come in along the sides and swoop over your like mid hip, and then the bottoms come in there and add all that like swooshy like volume and swooshiness to the bottom hem. So it's a really beautiful skirt. I love how it kind of swooshes. I wore it the other day. Got a lot of compliments on it. Thank you, everyone. It gives you a lot of shape and a lot, it's like a very beautiful silhouette. Very pretty overall. I love how the dress came out, and I did make a couple of modifications that I think just improved how I liked the dress. It does call for like a back zipper to get in and out of it, which honestly would make it easier to get in and out of, but I personally really dislike the feeling of zippers in knit garments usually. I just find them very uncomfortable. I'm very sensitive to textures and the feel of things. I decided to just omit the zipper. I just sewed up the back seam the same way as everything else. Turned out perfect. And then for the collar, I just sewed the collar together and attached it like a neckband. And it worked perfect. I can get it on and off, you know, maybe a little bit more wiggling, but like not that much. And then I don't have to find anyone to help me like, you know, pull up the back zipper. So for me, it worked out better. I was a little worried. I feel like I have a big head, so I was kind of worried if it wouldn't go over, but if there's enough stretch and ease in the garment and in the fabric, I didn't have any problems. If you have maybe a less stretchy fabric or a different size that's much smaller, I don't know. Maybe you have an extremely large head. I'm not sure. But what I did first is I just base stitched the collar together first and then tried to put it over my head. And I was like, okay, this fits fine. And then I removed the basting and then I sewed it on. So that's something you can try if you're worried about it fitting over your head, if you want to try that. Overall, it took 3.5 yards of this deep teal jersey fabric, and it cost me about $35. So that was great. And then it was, I'd say like a medium difficulty. The most difficulty I had, I think, is the thumb holes, and I would totally do those differently next time. They have you pretty much just sew together like a normal sleeve, and then when you get to the thumb hole portion, you're skipping and like back stitching on the ends, and you're rolling your seam allowance under and then like stitching in a square. My fabric and my sewing machine were having none of that, so it was a little bit of a pain to do it. I think next time what I would just do is like serge the edges of the sleeves, sew them together, and then just stitch it down in that little square box, like you do around the thumb hole. It would have been easier, probably would have fit more. I mean, the fit is fine, but I don't love the feel of like how it goes from like a seam to like a rolled seam to like a regular seam again. Not my favorite. I would have done it that way instead. So personal preference, obviously, do whatever floats your boat. Yeah. Other than that, I found it really easy to sew. It was a little bit time consuming because you're sewing each panel, and there are, like I said, 12 panels. You're sewing each panel, and then I serged all of the seams together, and then you're ironing and top stitching down each of the seams. So it's a little bit time consuming, but with sewing, it's kind of just like my happy place. It's just my time to relax and enjoy. I don't mind if it takes me a week to do a project. It takes me a week or however long, you know, whatever your slow sewing situation is. And that is it. I think that's all the 3 projects so far. I have another 6 projects left in our Make 9 2025. I have, you can go back and watch the first video I made about my Make 9 2025. I'll try to link it somehow, somewhere in the description box or something. That kind of went through all the 9 projects that I'm planning for this year. So the projects are still the same. I might have switched up the fabric a little bit going forward. I'm kind of debating still a little bit on some of my fabric choices for my summer garments. I have like a 2-piece set, a romper, and a linen dress. The red linen dress is staying the same because that's my birthday dress, and I plan on making that one. The other 2 fabrics I think are still a little bit up in the air, but I am getting those done pretty soon here. And if you have any questions about any of the patterns, I'm by no means an expert. I'm just a beginner sewist, but you know, I'm happy to answer how I found them, or if you have any questions that I can answer for you, feel free to chat them below. All right, thanks for coming along. I hope you have a beautiful day. Bye now.